Yeah, my 8th grade algebra teacher did. My friend Dabney and I found this recently going through yearbooks. She signed my yearbook. To Patrice, the seamstress of the 8th grade. I was like, I was making all my clothes, my friends' clothes, my sister's clothes. I am Patrice Mason. I was born in 1957 in Memphis, Tennessee. My parents were Joe and Martha Pipkin. I had an older brother, Joe. He was 2 years older, and my sister Stephanie is 5 years younger. We lived in the Central Gardens part of Midtown my entire life. Until I moved to New Albany, I was in that Midtown neighborhood, which is the oldest part of Memphis. So 100-year-old houses, beautiful neighborhood. It was like our own small town. And my dad used to say, when we get to the intersection of Central and Parkway, where Christian Brothers University is, we kind of get a nosebleed, because then we're getting out of our neighborhood. I grew up sewing with my grandmother. I don't know when I started. We did it forever. She would take me, we would go to, there were different restaurants that we would go to for lunch. They would have children's fashion shows. And I would tell her the things I liked. You know, Grandma, I love that dress, but I wish the collar was like this, or I wish the hem was like that. Things that we wanted to change, and then we would go from there to the fabric store, buy what we needed, and we'd make it the way we wanted. So I think that's what I loved, was that she taught me it can look any way you want it to. You know, you go in a store and you love something, but there are things you don't like about it. Grandma taught me that if you make it, then you can just do it any way you want. And that's what I loved. And if you make mistakes, you can fix them. I was cutting out a pattern one time, I don't know, I was in early elementary, and I cut down the center, which was the fold. It wasn't supposed to be cut, and I cut maybe 6 to 8 inches down, and I thought I was gonna have to start all over. And she said, oh no, we'll fix that. And we just made a little tab and put some cute buttons on it, and it fixed it. So she taught me you can fix those mistakes that you made.
Was this your mom or your dad's mother?
This is my dad's mother. My mom's mother sewed, but she died when I was 5, and she didn't sew as much as my dad's mother did. So I spent a lot of time at her house doing that. We even made my bridesmaids' dresses together. I made clothes for my children. I now do things for my grandchildren. Made all my children's costumes, and now I make all my grandchildren's costumes. The baby, though, Luke, who is 3, the last 2 years he has not wanted to put on his costume. He wants to wear his own clothes. So he would have been really cute in the roasted marshmallow costume I made, but he refused to wear it. So who knows, maybe this year he'll want to be something.
So when you were in like elementary school, you already were sewing your own clothes?
Oh yeah. The first one, I do know that the first thing my grandmother let me take home and work on by myself, I was 6 or 7 years old. And I was very proud of that, and I even put the zipper in by myself. But when I brought it back to her, she pointed out that there were 4 or 5 stitches that weren't straight on that zipper. And I said, but Grandma, my hair's long, who's gonna know? And she said, you'll know. So I had to take it out and fix it.
And what year did you graduate from high school?
Central High School, the high school. Central was the first high school in Memphis.
Okay.
And it is a beautiful, beautiful old building. It's a wonderful place. I graduated in 76.
So that was kind of like the height of a very, the fashion of that time of your high school
was so fun.
Yeah, like what were the fashions of your high school? Like what was that for that time period? Like what would you say were the big fashion, especially for girls? Like what were you
Peasant
into?
tops that you embroidered. You know, you would embroider around the neckline, or you'd have a slit down the middle and you'd embroider flowers and things on it. I remember taking jeans apart. I would open up the inseams and side seams and put patches of fabric in them to turn it into a skirt, or open up, things that I see now that have come back. You open up the side of your jeans and add a panel in there to make them like bell bottoms, but it's just any kind of random fabric you can find. Yeah.
So that's kind of like your high school era of fashion would have been.
Yeah.
That the kind of hippie inspired.
Yes.
And bell bottoms and things like that. So where in Memphis, like what was your fabric store? Where did you
Hancock.
go? Ah.
Hancock was the only place to go. And those jeans, if you got new jeans for Christmas or your birthday, you immediately went to the Highland Strip by University of Memphis. And there were stores that would have cardboard boxes out on the sidewalk. And you would turn in your brand new jeans so you could get some faded, worn out ones, because you didn't want those new jeans, and you just couldn't bleach them right. So yeah, those were the things we loved. And now I see all these posts about people taking old quilts and turning them into jackets. I did that my freshman year of college. I just gathered scraps from all the clothes I had made for myself and made a quilt jacket. And now it's come back around.
How did music play a part in what inspired you for your fashion adventures?
Oh man, that's tough. Just because that's how everybody dressed, except David Bowie. And when David Bowie came to Memphis the first time, and he had the lightning bolts in his hair and all the makeup and the wild outfits, and so when he came back the next year, that's how the majority of the audience dressed. But he walked out in a button-down collar Oxford shirt, pleated dress pants, and suspenders. And his hair was blonde, and he didn't have any makeup on. It was quite a shock. It was quite a shock.
He flipped his whole look.
Oh yeah, yeah. I grew up in the best time for music, and I mean everybody knows that's true because people not only still listen to the old music, the music of my time, they're even trying to remake these songs. I grew up with Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan and James Taylor and the Stones, and my first concert was the Beatles. I was very young, but that was my first concert that my grandmother took my brother and me to. And I was too young to understand what was going on. Girls passing out and screaming, and I'm thinking, well, I can't hear anything. I can't even hear him singing. David Bowie, Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper was the one that the day after the concert, there were lots of articles in the paper about that. They didn't ever want him coming back because he did things you weren't supposed to do. Not like now, it's not the same. But some of that old music that people try to bring back, I will catch myself, like with Joni Mitchell. The first time I heard a remake of her song, and I hear they paved Paradise and put up a parking lot, I said out loud, and I was by myself, you don't even know what this song is talking about. You have no idea, We were all about the parks and the forests, and when they wanted to take Interstate 240 through Overton Park, we all went, hundreds of us went to the park and just sat there. It's not going to happen. We protested that because you can't take this away from us. And they never did. Tore down a lot of houses in that neighborhood thinking that it was going to happen, and then it never did. And it took more than 20 years for people to be able to buy the property where they had torn down all those homes. So for 20 years it was steps and driveways going to overgrown lots where beautiful 100-year-old homes had once been. That neighborhood, that area of Memphis, is protected now. You can't do that anymore.
What is there now?
People have built homes there now.
Okay.
They finally did sell the lots. But you can't tear down houses. You can't even, there's a building there in that historic neighborhood that was the home to some records keepers, the history of Memphis. Once that closed, they sold it and then found out that the people who bought it wanted to put a restaurant in. Well, no, you got to go through the Historical Society to do that. It finally passed, and then they started to paint the bricks. And someone saw it, was driving down Union and saw that the bricks were being painted, and they immediately were told, you have to stop, you can't paint those, and you got to wash all that paint off of there. It's got to be cleaned off. So it's protected. You can't take those big, beautiful homes and make them duplexes or quadruplexes. Some of them are so big. You can't do that. So they're protected. It was just a great neighborhood to grow up in. And, you know, just meet your friends at the corner and hang out all night in the summer. Just wander the neighborhood, listen to music. Yeah. And concerts at the Overton Park Shell, which they still do.
So you were about, what, 13, 14 years old when Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis? How old were you?
No, I was not that old. Was that 68?
Yes.
Okay. I was 11.
You were 11.
And I know it was on a Thursday because I always spent Thursday nights with my friend Dabney. And I was there for 4 days because no one was allowed out on the streets. We knew because we went to St. Mary's Episcopal School at the time, and St. Mary's never closed for anything. 3 feet of snow, we're not closing. And when we saw that St. Mary's was closed, we honestly believed the world was ending. But no one was allowed out, and when you finally could go out, my dad came to get me because it wasn't safe for my mom to. And there was a curfew. Everyone had to be inside at night. And I remember every single night, helicopters would fly over with the big spotlights, and it could be midnight, but when that helicopter came over, it looked like noon. And my brother and I were sitting at the dining room table doing our homework, and we heard the helicopters coming. We started talking. This must be so boring for them. Every night they fly over all these streets, spotlights up and down the streets. And so we decided to go in the front yard and wave at them and tell them thank you. So we stepped out in the front yard and the spotlight came and we're waving up in the air, thank you. And in less than 5 minutes, 4 police cars pulled up. The policemen got out of their cars with their guns drawn because we had stepped out of the house.
This is when they were looking for troublemakers, or were they looking for
No
the
one was
person?
allowed out. No one was allowed out
It
of
was
their
just
houses.
you were to stay in your home.
Yes.
To prevent rioting. Or
Everyone
whatever.
had to be in before dark. Yes. Because if you were driving anywhere, if you were walking anywhere, you were in danger. So everything was shut down, all of it. And we couldn't wrap our heads around it. My brother and I couldn't understand why this was going on, because we weren't taught to hate. So we simply didn't understand it. It was a horrible time.
How do you think that impacted you later in life, as an adult, maybe as a teacher?
Well, I think not just that happening, but I think the way the world was then, you know, things that, again, we weren't taught to hate, so there were things we didn't understand. My sister and I were at the library at least 5 days a week. We loved the library. but we never understood, why is there a white entrance and a black entrance? And sometimes we'd go through the black entrance just to see what they would do to us, see what would happen. I cannot go to the Memphis Zoo and go by where the hippopotamuses are, and there's a bathroom right next to it. I can't walk by there without seeing those two water fountains. It's not how we were raised. It's not how it was in my family. So we didn't understand. We didn't understand that. It didn't make sense to us because my dad said, you're not above or beneath anyone. God created all of us. We're all his creatures. So no one's better than you and no one's beneath you.
When you went to high school, had it become integrated by the time you got to high school?
Oh, yes. I think I was in middle school when St. Mary's, which was a private girls' school, when they were one of that was after integration. The public schools waited, and when St. Mary's finally admitted blacks, I do remember the girl the first one was a girl whose father was the national chairman of the NAACP. But yeah, Central High School had long since been integrated. And a lot of people my brother was at was at East High School before Central. And he loved it there, but we weren't in that district, and that's when busing was going on. So he did the same thing a lot of kids did. He used my aunt's address because she was in that district. But then he ended up transferring to Central because his football coach was moving to Central, and that's who he wanted to play football.
So you graduated from high school in '76, and then what'd you do?
Went to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville.
What'd you major in?
Started out in education, and I was only there 2 years. Came home and found a great job for the summer that was supposed to be just 2 weeks while they were looking for somebody else, and it ended up being 18 years. So I would take classes, Memphis State at night, but then when I moved here, I went to Blue Mountain to get my teaching certificate.
So you never did the whole home economics major like a lot of girls did at that time.
No. And I didn't take home ec in high school because what they were teaching I already did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, Central High School is still open?
Oh, yes. Yes. As a matter of fact, Central High, you mentioned band. Central High's marching band, has won national competitions for years. And just this past year, the Central High School Jazz Band won the International High School Jazz Competition. So they're still very much, they still have theater, a wonderful art program, music programs, very involved with the arts. They understand the importance of that, and I don't think a whole lot of high schools in big cities do now, but Central does. Very proud of that.
Growing up in a city like Memphis where music is so important, did you ever venture down to Beale Street and experience that type of music?
I experienced every type of music. That's something my sister and I talk about a lot. We're so thankful that we were exposed to all of it. My mother sang opera, and I'm not going to tell you that I enjoyed going to the opera, but I have an appreciation for that. And we would go to the symphony. When I was at St. Mary's, you went to the symphony on a Sunday afternoon as a field trip. We were exposed to everything, and I grew up really in the Coliseum, And we would go to concerts just because we wanted something to do on a Friday night. Or going to the rodeo, and you would have the country music people playing. So, yeah, I don't think there's any kind of music that we weren't exposed to growing up. And while we didn't appreciate it then, Steph and I talk about it all the time now, how happy we are that we had all of that we love every kind of music and appreciate every kind of music.
You had a front row seat to some of the most amazing concerts that Memphis ever saw.
Before the Coliseum was built, when they were in the planning stages, my dad they put together a board, Mid-South Coliseum board, and my dad was the chairman of the board. So as they were building it, we would go there and he would take me, walk me through. I think I went more than my brother did, actually. But we would walk through and see the progress, and then when they finally laid the floor, put in all the equipment they needed to have ice skating and have a hockey team, my dad and I were the first ones to skate on that. But one of the things they did for the board, all the board members, not because he was chairman of the board, every board member had access to tickets to any concert, any event in the Coliseum. You had free tickets. There was a section where any board members, bring your family, bring your friends, whoever, because being a board member was not a job. It was a community service. So yeah, lots of concerts, lots and lots of wonderful concerts, and never thought about the fact that other people were paying for tickets. I think my brother and I used to talk about that. I think we grew up thinking everybody went for free. Everybody came through the stage door. We didn't know.
What was the first show you saw? Do you remember?
The Beatles. Mm-hmm. Because I remember standing backstage and the big garage door back there opened and a limo pulled in. And the doors of the limo opened, and when the Beatles got out, I remember thinking, as young as I was, I thought, I think this is a really big deal. I think I need to remember this. It was a big deal. It really was.
Was that the first show there?
No. They had shows before that. But there's a lot of talk about their social media pages, Save the Mid-South Coliseum, and there's a lot of talk about all the shows that were there. Elvis and the Rolling Stones, they go through all these shows, but what people not have forgotten, but I think because they're not old enough to remember, St. Jude every year had the St. Jude Parade of Stars. I don't remember what the tickets cost. It was something that was outrageous at that time, $100. Danny Thomas would always be there. But the St. Jude Parade of Stars had people like Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. and Sonny and Cher and huge names that would come for free just to raise money for St. Jude. And then, of course, when they'd have the Mid-South Fair and the rodeo, it would be people like Roy Clark, people from Hee Haw, the Beverly Hillbillies, the Stars of Bonanza. Those were always fun.
And so they would come and do everybody would do a number or two and
yes.
kind of just do a whole night of...
The Parade of Stars would be a whole night of it, yes, to raise money. And it was something that people dressed up for. I still remember my parents going, and they'd be dressed like they were going to a formal wedding.
Did you ever see Elvis there?
No, my parents did. I think I was not only too young, but living in Memphis, that's all you hear about.
Yeah.
And you go on a trip and people ask you where you're from, you say Memphis, and they say, oh, Elvis. My grandmother and I went to Europe, and people asked where we were from, and we'd tell them, they'd say Elvis.
They would still do that today?
Yes, they would. Yeah, because he had 4 concerts scheduled when he died. I think he had done one of them, maybe. But yeah.
That he was supposed to do in Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
What year did you come to New Albany?
94.
Okay. So for 18 years you were in Memphis.
Yes. Well,
After your college
yeah.
thing.
And in all my 35 years in Memphis, I never lived outside of the 38104 zip code.
So were you still sewing any when you were like the college and after that time? Were you?
Oh, yeah.
Did you continue to sew?
Yes, always.
Did you ever get into the in the 80s, like the big shoulder pads? Did you make any of those big power suits? Did you have any of those?
Mm-hmm. Shoulder pads were awful. We just didn't know at the time. I still think they're awful.
But you did it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's what people wore.
Yeah.
But then, it was mid-80s was when I had Anna and started sewing for her. So, yeah, moved on to just the kids. I actually have a closet at home with all of those dresses and shorts and tops and things in there.
All of their play clothes.
Yeah. Anything I made is in there. And even my patchwork quilt jacket that I made when I was, 18, 19. That's in there too.
So you came to New Albany, and how did people figure out that you were that person to go to?
Because Christy Livingston came to my house. I don't know why, maybe to pick up Austin, because Austin and Charlie were friends. She came to my house and I was working on Kelly Faye's christening gown. I was making that. And she seemed so shocked that I sewed. And I said, well, what's the big deal? I mean, everybody sews. And she said, no, everybody doesn't. And it could be your side hustle if you wanted it to be. I said, okay, fine. Didn't think anything would happen with it.
And then she told everybody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess she did. Or she told people who told other people. And I often wondered.
How'd it happen?
People just started calling. And that was not my favorite time in my life, because I did too much of it. But I often wondered if my grandmother had any idea all those years ago when we would do it together that it would be something like that it would be something that I would do even for total strangers, that it would help pay the bills,
I imagine that it paid for a lot of bills.
It was more of a need. I was working as an assistant teacher. You make less than a nickel. And I was going to Blue Mountain, and I had 3 kids. So, yeah, it was nice to have that. But the thing about it was I didn't get to sew the things I wanted to sew. And that's not to say that there weren't things I enjoyed doing, because I did. And the number one thing about it was there were people I didn't know, but because I sewed for them, they're still my friends. So just today, I saw Kristen Buskirk Foster. Kristen and I didn't know each other when she became homecoming queen and asked me to make her dress. And we've been friends ever since, not acquaintances. Kristen is my friend and I love her. And I wouldn't have that had I not been sewing for people. And she, there are other people like that.
Of all of the things that you have sewn, are there certain things that really stand out to you? Do you have some things that you just look back and think, wow, I can't believe I got to do that?
First one that comes to mind was J.J. Harris bringing me her wedding dress, or calling me about her wedding dress. And it was not long before she died. And she was telling me she wanted me to have it so that if either of her girls wanted to do anything with it for their wedding, I could do that for them. And that one was really, really special because it was JJ. And it was fun to do that with Sarah Catherine, and it was fun to see this You talk about shoulder pads. She didn't have shoulder pads, but I'm telling you, those sleeves came above her ears. And it was so poofy and so 80s. But Sarah Catherine wanted something fun to wear to a rehearsal dinner. So we just upcycled it. I love upcycling. I love getting to do that. I love doing that for Amy and Laura Ruth. I've done that for my friend Dana Roberts. I used to sew all kinds of things for her girls when they were little, and that was another fun one. I'd make things out of a combination of old lace curtains, old wedding dresses, chenille bedspreads. We had so much fun with that. And now Dana's expecting her first grandchild, so we'll just start all over again.
Have you ever made anything from your parents' old clothing?
I've got some things of my mom's that I want to do something with, but the first thing I did with a shirt of my dad's was to make a memory bear when my first grandchild was born. I love those memory bears, the bears and the rabbits, just because they are made out of something like that. And I love that my grandson still tells me, Georgie Bear is one of my favorites. So
let's talk about the homecoming dresses. When did that start?
Gosh, a long time ago.
Do you remember who was the first one?
Lindley Wright. I think I was thinking about that the other day. I think I had done some maid's dresses before Lindley, maybe, but Lindley was the first queen's dress. Yeah.
Well, for a person who doesn't know what we're talking about, kind of explain the whole deal with the homecoming dresses at New Albany.
Okay, the whole deal with the homecoming dresses.
I don't know another way to say it.
I know, and it's still to this day, it's such a funny and bizarre thing to me that I learned early on. The homecoming dresses at New Albany are traditionally, they have to be maroon velvet. They have to be the right maroon. Until recent years, they have all been long sleeve, no matter what time of year it is, which, I remember the first one that wanted short sleeves, and when she asked if that was okay, I said, honey, it's your year, it's your dress, you're the queen, you do what you want, you're right, it's going to be hot. And that was a bit of a scandal that she had short sleeves. But no one can know ahead of time what the dresses look like. You don't talk about it. You don't tell anyone. You don't even give hints. And it's so crazy the way people try to find out. Kelly Faye was in elementary school, and she would come home and tell me about not just kids, but teachers who would try to find ways to get her to tell what the dress looked like. Or people I hadn't seen in ages who would just happen to stop by my house during homecoming time. Maybe they'd get to see the dress. Maybe I had it out somewhere. It's very bizarre, but it's also kind of sweet that it is a tradition. I remember with Maggie Jo Everett, because again, it was going to be so hot. And she wanted it to be long sleeves. And then I said, well, so what if it has an overlay? The bodice and sleeves are lace. The bodice has the maroon under it, but the sleeves don't. Which she was very happy with. But what I didn't think about was, I got to dye that lace to make it match that maroon. Just like with Catherine Ann, when we did the lace flowers along the edge of her train, I had to dye it to make it match. And I didn't still have the recipe for that dye because it was such a nightmare for me. I gave her the recipe and said I never want it back. So, yeah, those have been interesting. and fun. A lot of them were really fun. And, you know, Kelly Faye grew up with me doing that. And she would, you know, she knew about not only all the secrets, but also you don't get velvet wet. And when Shannon Good was the queen, she'd come from volleyball practice. And Kelly Faye would fuss at her, you can't come in this house sweaty and put that velvet on, you're going to ruin it, you know. So, yeah. It's changed a lot, though.
I wonder how many you've done. Do you know?
I looked at that book maybe a year or so ago. 20-something of them, yeah.
And so every year, everybody wants to be different, but they still have to be very, I mean, there's...
People
You
are
have to be
breaking from the
creative
tradition, though.
You have to, when it's the same color or the same fabric, you gotta, like, be creative to make it yours.
Well, and I think over the years, people have stepped out there and made it theirs more. You know, it was they were always very simple, very plain. But I remember, again, Kristen Buskirk Foster. Kristen wondered if it would be okay to put some very small rhinestones around the neckline. Sure, that would be okay. Do you think anybody will fuss about it? And I said what I always say, you're the queen, it's your dress, whatever you want to do. So once we got those on there, then she wanted to do them on the back too. And then we really got carried away, and the back of her dress was lace up. And that was bold. That was very bold of her. But the next year, the queen had rhinestones around her neckline, and then people started adding them to their cuffs or maybe like a belt. So I like that it is more, it's becoming more their own rather than the exact same, basically the same. Really the only thing that changed for many years was the neckline. You know, you might have Natalie McMillan Jones. Natalie wanted a drape back, which I think is beautiful. But you have to do it with no sleeves because you've got the zipper in the side. You can't have a zipper down the middle of the back if you've got a drape. So it was long sleeves and the zipper was in the side, and it took 3 of us to get her in it because and one of her fittings was actually in the hospital. She was in the hospital with mono. So that was an interesting year, but it was fun. It was always fun with Natalie.
I know that you've worked with a lot of theatrical productions, and you've done some really interesting costumes for different things.
I did used to do a lot of costumes for the high school before they started renting them. I did a lot of those, and those were fun. A lot of those were fun.
Can you think of one that was like especially challenging or kind of where you had to really think out of the box? I mean, it's such a problem solving.
Or for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where we had a lot of, we had owls and fairies and all different kinds of animals. Now, I remember when New Albany did Hello Dolly, when Laura Sanders was in high school. And the thing that I think blew all our minds was to make those costumes. When she picked out the fabric she wanted, it was a beautiful blue shantung fabric. But I looked at her mom, I said, you do know it's going to take 20 yards of this to make her dress because it had to be so full. You know, that was a lot. That was a lot of gathering. And she said, yeah, but this is her senior year and that's what she wants. And we had just enough left over to make her prom dress, which was short and strapless and simple, just a very simple dress, but it was from the scraps of her Hello Dolly costume. So that, yeah, I was happy I got to do that. Never throw scraps away. There's always something you can use them for. You know, and when my own children would laugh about my fabric hoarding, which you're very familiar with, I would have something, maybe I'd have some piece of fabric I bought. I didn't know what I was going to use it for, but I knew I'd use it one day. And 20 years later, I use it on something, and I'll just kind of do a little ha ha ha. See, I told you I'd eventually use it, and I'm using it. So that's good.
Did you make the mushroom that is the park mascot?
Yes.
What is it called?
What
Has
is
a
he?
name.
Isn't he Gary or something?
I can't remember. But it's a mushroom.
He does have a name.
He does have a name.
Yeah.
I can't think of it though.
As a matter of fact, when Betsy Hamilton picked it up, she posed in my front garden in that costume. I think I'd ever get that hat together. All these years of doing my grandchildren's costumes, and one that I really loved was, I think 3 years ago, when my granddaughter said she wanted to be a monarch caterpillar, and that made me very happy. So that took some thinking on to do it though. But I've always done their costumes. I've never done one, and so this past Halloween I thought, well, I need to dress up too. Every time I go to see my grandchildren, they will hug me and then immediately say, do you have our mints? They love, it started with George, who's the oldest, he's 9. They love strawberry Mentos. So I always have to bring mints with me. So I decided what better to be than a pack of Mentos. So I did not tell anyone I was doing that. They didn't, even Charlie and Claire didn't know. And so I told Claire, they were upstairs, I said, I'm going to put on my costume and I will call out to you when I'm about to walk in the room. But what you have to say is, presenting Nani as seen through the eyes of George, Louisa, and Luke. And I think I'm going to have to wear that one every year because, I mean, what am I going to do now?
Can't top that.
I am. I was a pack of strawberry Mentos.
Do you have any like movies or shows that you watch that really you watch more than anything? It's for the costuming. Is there anything that you're just like, oh, that was the most beautiful show I've ever seen?
The old musicals. I mean, there's nothing like those old movies that I grew up on, and the costumes in those things.
Which ones do you think of?
I think of My Fair Lady, Mary Poppins. Ooh, one that I didn't grow up on, but my kids did. Love all the costumes, and of course love the star. The Labyrinth with David Bowie. Love all the costumes in that. I recently dug through all my old linens, tablecloths that are embroidered or crocheted placemats. Some of the oddest things I forgot I had, and I dug all of those out because I want to make some things out of them. Some shorts, some tops, I don't know. They're just laying out waiting for me to decide what I want to do with them.
There are a lot of people on social media, a lot of young people who are doing that.
Yes.
Does that excite
you? And I
you?
love that. There's one that really excites me when I see her because she's obviously very young, a teenager, maybe in her mid-teens, and I think, good for you. Good for you that you're sewing. Because I used to tell kids, like if we do it in a summer workshop, or if there was something that we did at the high school where Kelly Caltharp would teach them how to write a thank you note, and I would teach them how to sew on a button. And I would tell kids, even if you just learn how to hem a pair of pants and sew on a button, you'd be surprised at how much money you're going to save. I mean, I don't know what the cleaners charges to sew on a button, but it's not free. Hemming your pants, that's not free. Just learn, those are the easy things. Learn how to do the basics, but nobody teaches it anymore.
It seems like there's maybe more interest in it now.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be because of social media that young people see it on social media and think, oh,
Yeah.
I want to do that. because it is such a the potential for creativity is unlimited.
And people, you know, before all of that you're talking about, people would think, well, of course you sew, you're a grandma.
Yeah.
It's a grandma thing to do. Well, no, I've been doing it my whole life, long before I was a grandma. But yes, I love that so many people are showing those things on social media. All kinds of sewing lessons, tutorials, people making patterns that you can order for free. Yeah, it's coming back.
Where do people buy a pattern now?
If you can find a fabric store or Hobby Lobby, but online you can get free printable fabrics. I mean, printable patterns. The first one I got was very confusing to me because, you know, I was used to the patterns, and I don't buy a lot of patterns because I have all my patterns. I never throw them out. But I bought one, or I got a free one. I printed it out. Well, it only prints out on 8x11 paper. So it's like putting this puzzle together. So you have to tape it all together.
Oh, wow.
So that, I thought, oh, this is really not, I may be too old for this, to do this kind of thing. You can buy the patterns, the old school kind of patterns, in the envelope, or you can buy or get free printable patterns. I just think those are harder.
Yeah.
Plus, you can't print them on tissue paper, and it's a lot easier to pin that down or weight that down on your fabric. Anybody needs patterns, I got plenty.
What do you want to make? Are you?
That's why it's all scattered in the sewing room, because I don't know. I walk through and I have different ideas every time. Something's got to hit me hard, and then I'll do it.
Yeah. And is that something that you get to do very often, where you just get to go make something and that someone hasn't asked you to do?
Yes, because I don't sew for the public anymore.
So now you can do what you want.
That's right.
What was the last thing you made that you wanted to make?
It would have been something for my grandchildren. And see, now I've got another one coming, so there's more to be made.
Yeah.
I've never thought of it as a gift. It's something that I learned, and I'm thankful that I did. I'm thankful that my grandmother taught me that. And even still have 3 dresses of hers that she made for herself. And I swap them out on mannequins just because I like to have them there.